The authors of the Bible, some of whom we haven't got a clue who wrote them, we don't know their character, we don't know their integrity, we don't know their memory. For example, if I ask you the 4 Gospels that we have in the New Testament, who are they? Were they truthful? Did they have a good memory? Were they men of integrity? There is no corroboration. If the very essential thing about God was one or many, for example, and people are confused about these things, I would say this is a failure of communication from God. But if you ask me as a Muslim, our approach is God has always communicated this very clearly. There's only one God. You should serve and worship no other God besides Him. Don't ascribe any partners to Him. Don't say God has a family or children. Always God is one and alone without any partners. Always been the case. If you go to the Jewish scripture, the Hindu scriptures, you can find this remnants of the belief that God is one and only. Unique, absolute, self-sufficient, with no likeness or co-equal or comparison with Him. It's been the universal message throughout what Islam says. So when people go against this message, it's not that God has failed in communication. People have invented their own misinterpretation into the text or message of God. God never sent a prophet ever saying, I am 3 in 1. You would not find in the Jewish scripture even a single statement like that. And this is meant to be the very foundation of Christianity, where, Old Testament and New Testament. No, nothing. Rather, you'll find statements like this: I alone am God and there's none else. You shall have no other God besides me. Very unambiguous, clear statement.
You're obviously saying that Christ was not a prophet.
Christianity is a distortion of the message that Christ received as a messenger of God. Yeah. So our view is Christianity is a distortion of the message that Christ received, and that message has always been the same.
You're saying it's been misportrayed in the Bible, or you're saying that the Bible's been
The authors of the Bible, some of whom we haven't got a clue who wrote them, we don't know their character, we don't know their integrity, we don't know their memory. For example, if I ask you the 4 Gospels that we have in the New Testament, who are they? Were they truthful? Did they have a good memory? Were they men of integrity? There is no corroboration. In fact, when we examine those text writing, because that's all we have, we don't have any witness testimonies about their character. We have the documents themselves, allegedly from them, but much later from the events, not contemporaneous documents. So when we examine those documents anyway, what we find, the author of those books are not trustworthy. Because I can't trust someone who says, these are all the generations. Page number 1 in the Gospel of the New Testament. First page. These are all generations. Because I've read this very clearly. From Abraham to David, from David to the exile to the Babylon, and from that to Jesus Christ. 3 lots of 14, and he says these are all the generations. You can show this in the Bible. No, what I'm saying, that statement is historically inaccurate.
The genealogy is inaccurate.
No, his statement that there are 14, 14 and 14 equals to 42 generations, all of them, his statement is historically false. Because when we go back to the Old Testament to find these people, we find there are more than 14. So, problem number 1, he is giving us ahistorical information. Either he doesn't know, or he knows and yet he's distorting information. I'm not calling him a liar, I can call him a mistaken. But when we examine what he has omitted from those names, we realize the names he has omitted are very significant names. He omits a name within this genealogy, someone called Jehoiakim.
This is coming from Abrahamic texts or from archaeology?
From the text themselves, from the Bible.
From Abrahamic?
No, from the Bible. New Testament and Old Testament, not outside it. So this is Matius.
So within the Bible you're saying there's evidence for missed aspects of that?
Yeah, black and white, clear. So Matthew gives in first chapter, he tells you about these people. Look here. Amos, the father of Josiah, Josiah the father of Jeconiah and his brothers. That statement is false, because Josiah was the grandfather of Jeconiah. How do I know that? If I go to the Old Testament and look at the same genealogy, 1 Chronicles chapter 3 verse 15-16, we find Josiah has 4 children. One of them was Jehoiakim. He had children who were called Jeconiah. So why did he omit Jehoiakim? Maybe just whatever reason. But when we go into another chapter of the Bible, in the Old Testament, in Jeremiah, God curses Jehoiakim, who's been omitted, that you will have none to sit on the throne of David. Matthew wants to make Jesus the son of David, so he can sit on the throne of David. So if you had Jehoiakim in there, you're shooting yourself on the foot, because anyone through line of Jehoiakim cannot be on the throne of David. So he takes him away.
So you're saying he's reverse engineering the genealogy into an already...
Yes, so that really shows that this is not a trustworthy individual. He's distorting for a theological motive. Turn over to the next page. He gives another prophecy. As was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Very well-known prophecy. Go back to the Old Testament. This prophecy simply doesn't exist. So what's happening here? Either he's making up a prophecy, one possibility, or there was a prophecy and the books are lost. But either way, it's problematic. We are now talking about scripture in the Old Testament which are either lost or Matthew's making things up. It doesn't help us in understanding Matthew to be a trustworthy person. If you go back, not back, even further, so many things he says. One example is a very well-known example. He says at the time of alleged crucifixion, graves of saints were opening up, and multitudes of them, they went to the city and appeared to many. No one mentions this. Imagine a dinosaur came up on the ground, and the only person that mentions is me. He didn't mention it, you didn't mention it. You would go and tell your friends and family and colleagues, I saw a dinosaur in Speaker's Corner. You don't simply say, it's a non-significant event. We would plaster it in social media. But in the Gospels or the traditions of the New Testament around that time, the Jewish chroniclers, the Christian chroniclers, Roman chroniclers, no one mentions this event, significant event. Not even the other Gospel writers, only Matthew. How can such a significant event, many people coming from the dead and going up to many people, if they could be their grandfathers and uncle who passed away and so on, they will talk about it in generations and generations. So it's not about like the absence of evidence and not the proof of absence and so on, but this is a significant event. No one mentions it. Certain scholars,
None of the other Gospels.
no one mentions it. Matthew is alone in mentioning this. And if you cumulatively look at Matthew's case, I personally find he's not a reliable person of history or contemporary accounts that he's presenting. Because I can see how distorting he is in terms of his presentation of the material, how he's presenting things which no one else talks about when they should, because that's what we expect, but he doesn't. Then I would question the integrity of this character. So that's why we're saying, like, how can we trust anything that comes from it? So this is the approach that we have. We can't just take it for face value and accept our belief just because someone says so. So Islam, if we go back to all the people in the past, there's this, as you said, universal belief. There's one super being that is the greatest of all, creator, Lord of this universe. The people may have other misconceptions, but being the most high is common to everyone. And that is what we're saying Islam is bringing back to the same message of all the prophets that God sent, the same God, to the people, so people can come back to this message rather than deviating from this true message and worshipping other than God and falling short in worshipping man, woman, trees and elephants and what have you other than God. So the message of Islam is like this. So when we talk about the purpose of life is to really think about critically how to find this purpose, and once we know what the purpose is, gladly accept it and apply it in your life. So if you think along this way, all the prophets and messengers, what was their religion? The religion of submission. Submission to one God. In Arabic, do you know what that is? Submission, submitting your will to the will of God. Islam. If you do that, you are Muslim. That's the meaning. That's the meaning. So if you...
The etymology of Islam is submission to God.
Islam is to submit your will to the will of God. Someone who does that, the practitioner,
Which
is a Muslim.
The act of faith.
No, it's not faith. Faith is in the articles of things we believe in, like believes in the unseen. I haven't seen angels, but I believe in them. So that's my articles of faith. Okay? But when we talk about...
But how can you submit without faith?
No, you do have to have faith, but if that faith is not necessarily you have to have evidence for. I may not have seen directly the angels but who still believe in it because of other evidence. Yeah? But still has to be based on evidence. I can't just believe a book, Harry Potter, and somebody says it's from God. What is it in there that proves it's from God? So that needs to be equally examined in this way, every single book that claims it's from God.
So you're advocating for the following of logic as the underpinning of
Intellect.
religious dialect.
Intellect is something that is, if you don't use it, it's reprimanded for not being using it in the Quran.
Right.
Yeah. So we can't just follow our forefathers.
Yeah, there's a definite departure there within Christianity, because that's, faith being the central tenet.
Yeah. So the Quran, for example, argues
Which
with
is
them.
the bridge over all of these aspects that logically don't make sense.
Yeah, but if you only leave faith as an arbiter to determine truth, then people have their individual faith claims and the truth will contradict. But truth cannot contradict by its very nature. Yeah? So we can't make this as an arbiter for deciding what is true or false. We have to have other things. So if you look at Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what was he like? What did people testify him of? If we find for the 40 years, they testified, his community, that he's a truthful and trustworthy individual, as-sadiq al-amin, truthful and trustworthy. So we already have, before his prophethood, because at the age of 40, God made him a prophet, everyone testified of him of a good character. So when he brought the message that you should not worship all the idols that craving with your own hands, but worship God, who's the creator of the heavens and the earth, they started, opposing, because now no longer idol business in Mecca, because it's a booming economic business. You come, give all these things to the people who are making idols and pilgrimage to it. That's why the opposition was. But the message is understood, makes sense, universally acceptable. Worshipping none but God. Why would I worship a tripod or a human being or a tree? The only being who is worthy of worship is the one who is the self-sufficient, absolute.
What's your name?
Mansoor.
You are
if you don't understand, I hope you don't misunderstand me.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's just.
It's been a pleasure listening to you, and I appreciate
me too. I appreciate
your amazing art of rhetoric and logical deduction and everything. I think it's
so we would like to invite you to become a Muslim and live your life as a Muslim. No, that's the whole idea of a conversation, so that there's an outcome, but you decide.
Well, my friend, we have engagements, but I really appreciate
please go for that. I appreciate your time and your conversation with me. May God open up your hearts to Islam and make you a happier person than you are already.
Thank you, Masud. I appreciate that.
Thank you. What's your name? Elena. Nice speaking to you, Elena. See you later. آخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.